Hello and welcome to the Empower Couples podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is a little bit different than we normally do, where we're going to answer 5 of the best marriage questions we've been asked lately.
Yes, and these come from all over the place, from our in-person couples workshop in Arizona that we had last month, our marriage web class online. 500 people were there. It was awesome, from all over the world. Our private sessions, DMs from Instagram, which we hit over 100,000 people. It's so great to be connected to so many people around the world. And also, this podcast is now one of the top 20 in the relationship category on Apple Podcasts. And that's because of all of you. So thank you so much for listening. Make sure you rate and review it as well so we can get this word out to more people.
And all of those things happening just in the past couple of weeks have led to a lot of questions coming our way. And so we want to discuss those here because, as we've said before, even if you, the listener, feel as if what you're going through is very specific to you, we on the other side know that the same kind of underlying things are the same in relationships. Now, the situations and how they show up can be slightly different, but one of the things that we see is a lot of the things are very common themes.
Exactly. So let's go into the first question. We're just going to be kind of rapping back and forth, kind of saying things off the cuff that come to mind. So the first question is, what's the difference between healthy and unhealthy conflict? Like, how do we know? So a couple of things come to mind, and I want to hear what you think as well, Aaron. But number one, I think a key distinction is, do you honor each other's boundaries? So a boundary is a way in which you can respect and honor and prevent doing destructive things to each other. An example being, if I say, hey, I need a break, that you actually give that break to me and don't chase after me, right? Or that we have an agreement for times of conflict, which, by the way, that comes from our book, The Argument Hangover, and there's a whole exercise on that. We have one, like no calling each other names. And it would be respectful and honoring that agreement if you didn't call me names, right? So I think the distinction number one that comes to mind is, do you honor each other's boundaries? Think about it like this. If you're playing a football game and you decided to kick someone in the stomach, you'd be thrown out, right? It just would be game over. You're not playing anymore. Same thing in this conflict with your partner. It's kind of like, imagine there was a referee there, like, oh, crossed a boundary, you're thrown out, right? You're no longer able to participate in this conflict.
In this conflict. Yeah, decent analogy there, I have to say.
I'm trying my analogies.
It was good. It was good. And really what it does come down to, this has been researched for many, many years, the real main difference between healthy and unhealthy conflict is not that you have them, but that it gets repaired. So even if you have heard that or not, we'll add a couple of elements here. There's long argument hangovers. So I think healthy conflict seeks to shorten the time period. You know, we could say that you're in the argument hangover. Yes, that's the experience of it. But basically that you don't let the conflict drag on being unresolved for long periods of time and seek to have that time period be shorter and shorter, that you do actually get to resolution. Now, that is a 5-step process we have in our book and web classes, so you can, go through that in either of those places. But I would shorten that time from having the conflict, feeling how you feel, to then actually repairing.
Yeah, one couple in a session this last week said their most recent argument, they were quiet and disconnected for about a week. And we were like, okay, we got to do some work on shortening that period of time, taking that from 1 week to instead, 3 days. Or if your argument hangovers are 3 days, bring it down to 1. So you're absolutely right. That repair is a very key piece to healthy conflict.
You can move us to the next question, but we'll just popcorn here. Oh, popcorn. That's what it's called, right? Like
yes.
Back and forth. And the one last thing I'll add, like relationship industry standard, is also about the harsh startup. So it's a good indicator as well, unhealthy to healthy. And if you're unfamiliar with the term, it's that 0 to 60 feeling, right? It's unhealthy conflict when it's just some little comment and then boom, it's like...
We're yelling at each other.
Yeah, exactly. It's how fast you escalate.
Exactly. Good point. All right, going to the second great question we've been asked lately. They said, can you elaborate on this? And they were referring to something actually in our post. How can you express your needs to each other without it being a power struggle for what is valid or not? So we had that in a post and they were like, can you explain more of that? So when we say this, we mean in a partnership, ideally, you would want to be able to express your needs to each other without it all of a sudden becoming a way that you have to argue for why that's valid. You know, a power struggle is when we both are needing to dominate, or one of us really has to be right, the other one has to be wrong. You know, that mindset doesn't support a thriving partnership. If one of us has to concede, like, no, we're going to fight to the death and you must concede of why that's not valid. But really, that power struggle is what kind of takes you away from feeling connected, united, and love. It more so feels like a battle. And so ideally, an example would be, let's say I went to Aaron and I said, hey, I need more quality time with you. Like, I feel like we've been so busy lately. I miss you. Let's schedule some time for us. And you came back to that. You're always saying that. But don't you see how hard I'm working? Like, when are you expecting me to have time for this? Like, you're always so needing more quality time. I need some time alone. And now it's like him needing time alone versus me needing quality time. And it becomes this, who's more valid than the other person.
Yeah. That was kind of like our Battle for Fairness web class. Yeah, it's not going to work that well if you follow up an expression of your partner's need with, well, what about my need? So really,
mine's more valid than yours.
Yeah. Well, I haven't got such and such a time for this, so it doesn't make sense that you're going to bring this to me, right? So obviously you can tell listening to this that wouldn't lead to good outcomes, but in the moments, right, we seem to default to a battle for fairness, for example. Also, I would say when it gets expressed as my unfulfilled need that's happening is your fault. So on the expression side, so that it can even be better received, you really want to phrase it or give the context in the way where it's saying, hey, here's what I need. And I'm not saying you've been doing a terrible job. I'm not blaming you. I'm not coming to you saying you have to change all these things. It's really just starting with, hey, here's my need, and then what can we do from this point going forward so that, you know, I can have this need better supported.
Yeah.
So it's more of a we.
Yeah, great point. Actually, and that actually reminded me of another session that we did. We were reminding them towards the end, after working through something going on, we said, it seems as though you've forgotten you're on the same team fighting for the championship. You think you're on opposite teams fighting for the championship. And it's like, no, you are supposed to be united and headed in the same direction. It doesn't need to be a power struggle for who's more valid or not. Say, have the mindset of, how do we fulfill your need and my need? It really is a mindset thing. It's not my need or yours.
Yeah.
It's yours and mine. That's a better mindset.
Yeah. That's a great point. And probably as you transition to the next one, it's a good reminder to let go of your partner's need being in conflict with yours being met or not.
That's great.
And have them be separate. Your partner sharing a need, all right, has nothing to do with any of your needs. How can you help them fulfill that? And when you have something, ideally you bring it up at a separate time than when they decide to bring up theirs. But yeah, you're exactly right. The marriage or relationship is a back and forth, expressing needs. Hopefully expressing needs, not suppressing them. Expressing needs, and then working out how you each can support the other in fulfilling on them.
Yes. Boom. That's great. Okay. Third great question we've been asked lately is, what if we disagree on something big, like how to discipline kids? Right? So some of the big ones that couples would say is, you know, more of a deal than, I don't know, small things around the house would be, what about finances? Like a big financial decision, or one of us wants to quit their job, or having another child, or how to discipline kids, or do we move across the country, right? Some of those of bigger life things. So regarding discipline for kids, I think even zooming out from that specific topic, what we oftentimes hear from people when they're referring to whether it's like a financial thing or kids, they're always referring to their past. How I was raised, how I saw my parents do it. And then it'd be against yours, and yours is different, let's say. But you have to ask yourself, this is what I say to them oftentimes, is that the best place to pull from? Right? Like if you're trying to make this big decision for your life and strategizing on, the outcome that you want to have and the actions that are going to lead you there, is pulling from just your past the best place to go? And at least from our mindset, like I can even draw a parallel right to some financial decisions we're making lately. We can't just bank on how we were raised, because that may not actually be the target, the outcome that we're headed towards.
It's funny you said bank. What are you talking about? Financial.
Oh, there you go. It's like that. Boom, boom, right?
Yeah.
So we instead have a mindset of, let's do research, actually. Let's learn some strategies from experts who are maybe closer to the direction that we are headed and what aligns with our values. And that's a key word to really underline and circle, is like what's actually most connected to our family values that we're trying to create, as opposed to, well, this is just how I saw my parents do it, so let's do it that way.
Well, two things. You then linked to my answer, but that's fine.
Okay, sorry, giving a spoiler.
No, it's fine. Yeah, a little spoiler. Yes, to your point, I thought that was great when you said that on the session the other day. What if both of your viewpoints are, number one, not the only ones, but maybe not the best ones? And it's like when you say that, yeah, I can sort of admit or accept that, probably my singular idea about how to raise our children probably is not complete, probably is missing a few things. I'm sure I can learn some things.
It's very narrow focus, right?
And then when you bring it out that way, then to your point, well, what if we just each spend some time? And it's so easy nowadays to find people you resonate with on particular topics. So listen to some podcasts, watch some YouTube videos, get some books, maybe even attend an online web class, maybe even go to a seminar of someone that you really enjoy and resonate with, and learn some of the things that they're sharing. You're probably going to pick up something that you didn't have in your, in this case, parenting and discipline tool bag. And it's not that you have to even say that what they're saying is exactly right, but collect what you can, come back together with your partner and say, where are we at? We got some different ideas. We heard some different tools and actions. Now put it together for what's going to best serve you.
Yeah. And it makes me think too that when people are trying to make these decisions, they almost do things on autopilot. Even where people send their kids to school. Oh, well, that's just the school nearby, so that's where they're going to go. Instead of actually really slowing down and consciously going, what is actually the best decision that's aligned with that value? I wanted to also say, whenever we're working with couples with young kids who are wanting to get on the same page about their parenting techniques, their philosophies, how they're going to handle tantrums, how they're going to handle discipline, there is a program in particular that
big emotions?
Big emotions. Thank you. Right. It's not tantrum. No tantrums. Big emotions. Good point. There's a program in particular that we really resonate with and love, and we've partnered with. So we'll actually link that in the show notes. So you can go check out the program, see if it resonates. Our link actually has a discount for you. And we recommend all parents do this together, because then you can actually get on the same page about a philosophy, learn from an expert, as opposed to, again, just like, let's do it the way we each were raised, which might not be the best.
So let me state this a different way to kind of close this one out, because you did say it a couple of times, but not explicitly.
Okay.
So if you are in a place where you cannot come to agreement on a big decision, one of the things that might help is zooming out to either what is the shared value, which is kind of what you mentioned. What's our shared value here, I guess, around parenting, since that's what we're talking about, and or the experience. So depending on if you've identified your values or not, or maybe this is an area that wasn't linked to a core value, but okay, what do we want to experience? Okay, well, with discipline, we want to experience being on the same team. We want to experience
like feeling
thoughtfulness, empowered, empowering our kids to explore and be creative and be themselves still. So that's either the value or the experience. So start at that higher level. Usually when people get stuck, they get stuck at the level of just action. But if you zoom out to the value or the experience that you both have shared, then that opens up a world to what are other actions that we wouldn't have thought of that could still lead to the same quote unquote outcome of the shared value or experience.
I love that. That's great. So let's go to the fourth question that we've been asked lately. What do we do if one of us often feels like it's not that big of a deal, in quotes, but it is to the other person? This was actually brought up by one of the male partners in the partnership with his female partner. And we thought it was a great question, right? Because he's like, look, I don't mean to be rude. Like, he's like, I'm not trying to be malicious here, but a lot of these things don't seem like that big of a deal to me, but they're a really big deal to her. What do I do so I'm not constantly just invalidating her? So you want to jump in on this one?
Well, it's more of a general one, I would say, and you just can't judge. Mm-hmm. You can't judge that because you don't think that something is a big deal, that it should or shouldn't be to them. So it's really starting to understand that, there are some differences that you have as individual people. There are differences that you have from male to female partners. Mm-hmm. There are different likes and dislikes and preferences and significant factors of significance to you versus your partner. And so there's just no judging that. And we're not giving you the solution as in, here's the solution to this question, but it's more so, can you just accept? Can you just listen? Can you just hear or understand that this is something that's important to them?
Yeah.
And maybe just give yourself a pause to not have to come up with a solution right then and there, except just let them express it. I think oftentimes just to express it is a part of the solution anyway.
Yeah, I like to draw parallels to even other areas of our life. So let's say professionally, you were like some kind of a leader or manager, and one of your team members came in and they were like, oh my gosh, I'm just really upset about how this person is treating me, or this role is too overwhelming to me. Would you be like, oh, come on, Susie, it is not that big of a deal? No, of course not, because you want to be a great leader, and great leaders know that to influence others, you have to empathize with them. That's something that we really love, a quote from an FBI negotiator, and he really hits that on the head. Like, in order to influence anyone and to have their respect, you have to empathize with them, you have to understand their perspective. So just like in your professional world, you wouldn't just go around invalidating them and telling them that's stupid or that's not that big of a deal, get over it. You wouldn't do that because you want to be a great leader. Same thing in your partnership. And especially, I love what you said, Aaron, right? When you're different, I don't know what it's like to be you as a male, Aaron, right?
Well, no one will actually. I heard that on another podcast or video. Sorry, this is a little segue, but we can actually never exactly know what it's like for any other human being.
That's true.
Because we haven't lived in the experience they've experienced, home they grew up in, challenges they faced. So that creates a whole viewpoint of life, and we can never honestly, truly know someone else's experience.
And we have to understand too that, day to day, something might be significant, different to me than to you for many factors, from what I'm going through, maybe hormonally, what's going on, from different triggers that I have. And so we try to be curious with each other. If something is a big deal to one of us, not that we're perfect at this, but we try to say, well, what is it exactly that this means to you? Try to elaborate a little further of what is the significance here? Because I don't see that, so I need to understand your perspective more. So I think curiosity is a good step to take.
Yeah, really great. And then again, you can usher us into the last question, but I do want to make this statement, as I made a seemingly very obvious statement a minute ago where men are different than women, and that opens up a whole world, but we're even diving further into that ourselves, and we'll do a whole episode on it. But I did want to share, because I thought this was very interesting, one major difference with men is that having new experiences triggers dopamine, and that raises testosterone in men. Then that raise in testosterone actually has a positive health impact for men, like dealing with stress and even being happier. So all of those things are very specific to males, to the male biochemistry, and those levels. And so, yeah, if I say that there's a new experience I want to have, then look at all the positive effects that would happen if I get to experience that. And if you say, well, that's not important to me, well, that doesn't
have a win. It's like a win for our relationship if I focus on what's good for you in a way.
Yeah. Well, and for you, having a new experience isn't going to necessarily trigger the same dopamine and testosterone level raise and then allowing you to deal with stress and being happier. There's going to be other things for you, but for me, for who I am specifically, that's going to be a benefit.
Yeah.
So who is anyone else to really say?
Yeah, that's great. And we're excited. We are like formulating a ton of content for this episode about differences between men and women. So keep a lookout for that one. All right, let's go to the fifth and final question that we've been asked lately this week that we think is great. And that is, what about ideas to stay connected when you have kids and you're exhausted at the end of the day? And things do change when you have a kid. I mean, already there's a lot on your plate, just adulting, right? From your profession and trying to just manage a household, but then add in kids. And there's an analogy that is really helpful for us from a good mentor and friend of ours named Joel Weldon. And he says, you only have 100 energy units per day. And that's if you sleep well.
Yeah.
Right? So if you don't
you wake
sleep
up with
well,
40.
Exactly. Yeah. You could start the day with, 70 energy units out of 100, depending on how your sleep is. So regardless, there's whatever you start with. And then everything that you're doing and focusing on, decisions, actions you have to take, that is lowering your energy units. And in modern life, with everything on your plate, from the time you wake up till dinner time, you can be exhausted. And so it is a great question, and there's really not this like perfect solution to staying connected. I think it really is about intention. Now, for couples who don't work together like we do, so we're able to take a break from work and go to lunch or, just sit outside. And so we're able to segment and just get time for us. But even for couples who don't have that working time together, I think it's really about taking a stand for your relationship and doing what you got to do. Hire the sitter, ask a family member to help out, ask your friends to do, trades. Hey, I'll watch your kids this weekend if you watch ours next weekend. We need to
Or vice versa.
Yeah.
I'm out of energy units, so I can't do it. I'll watch yours next weekend.
Exactly. Right. It's like you have to take a stand and do what it takes to get a date night or a date brunch and get that scheduled time with each other.
Last thing I want to say, because it's a great point about the energy units, also do a little inventory. What activities take up some of the most energy units? And are there some days that you even see those activities are coming up where you could put those activities off or not do them and save some of those energy units for your partner?
I love that. One other thought that came to mind too was looking at how you can zoom out from day to day, because you might not be able to every single night get this incredible quality time together. Maybe you do. Maybe you do dinner time with the kids, put them down, and then you get an hour or two together, and that's great. But maybe it's not every single night. Maybe you have to zoom out and look at the whole week and say, you know what, all right, how do we both kind of just get quiet time, alone time a few nights a week? But then how do we make sure Wednesdays we go on a walk, and Fridays we do the date night? Kind of zoom out at the larger perspective of the entire week so that you make sure you are getting a balance of some of that time to fill your cup as individuals, because that's really important too, right? Just as much as your relationship is. So how can you make time? And I love that inventory of what you're doing to really make sure you have time every week. Maybe it's, we're going to hire yard people because we both need to do, date nights on the weekend, and we have too many things we're doing. Well, it's funny because
we're bringing that up. We're at a place now, and based on how we define and split up roles, it really is more you. But we're close to getting too many emails and DMs, like every day now, which so exciting.
Yeah, keep it coming.
One thing I do want to share. It's taken 7-8 years to get to this. So this by no means was overnight, but for all of you listening to the podcast, for the increase on Instagram, all of the Weblcass people and the emails we're getting, it's really there for us to be so excited at the amount of questions and inquiry and help and support that really is inside of the sphere now for couples to grow, which is so amazing.
Yeah.
And for us to still be able to look at our energy units and say, I think we might really need someone to
help with some of these things. Exactly. Yes. So it's really about getting creative, taking a stand for your partnership, do what you got to do, hire the sitter, get help to stay connected. So these are just a few questions. We could have listed others, but these were the ones that we wanted to cover here today. We hope that you took at least one insight away from this. Other resources I'd really recommend to go further. Make sure you watch the recording of our most recent web class. It was a hit. People loved it. We still get daily messages about how good it was, and they're sending it to their partner and they're watching it together. So you can watch that at onlinecouplesworkshops.com/fightsmarter, and that link will be in the show notes if you didn't capture that. And also check out our book, The Argument Hangover. Make sure you're checking out our programs at our website. We'll put some links in the show notes. But go beyond the podcast. You can listen here, but there's so many other resources that we have, like our book and our web classes and our courses. So make sure you check all of that out. And with that, everyone, we love you, and we will talk to you on the next episode.